they've probably already tried a bunch of supplements before and had it not work. And so when they see yours, yeah, if you hit an emotional pain point, yeah, if you have a very, interesting mechanism of action, yeah, if you have a unique ingredient, all of these can help. But if you can show them that what you are selling is specifically relevant to them, that I think makes the selling process so much easier. And as I said, I think right now it's a value add. It's like an edge you could get if you apply it today. But I think in not that many years' time, if you're not doing it, you're going to be left out in the cold. I think everyone's going to be doing it.
Welcome, everyone, to the Affiliated Podcast, where we fill your heads with all the marketing information that you need to know, but you're not going to get anywhere else. And today, we're actually going to do something a little bit special, guys. And I think this is something we're going to do more and more often. But we understand that out there, there's always a lot going on. And we're in the middle of Q1, January, the whole new year, new me timeframes, and health is on everyone's mind. That being said, health is huge, and there's so many things going on. Oftentimes, I feel as a marketer myself, and definitely see it from you guys, listeners and business owners out there, because there's so much information, we tend to just kind of point and look what other people are doing. But when you're doing that, it means you're always behind. You're just trailing, and that means you can't be winning to the max level. That being said, here at ClickBank, we want you guys to win and be on the forefront, the cutting edge of what you need to know in every single industry and how you could take advantage so you're making the best, easiest dollars before anybody else is. And with that, today, we're going to bring on a good friend, and I consider a health expert, somebody that I don't know if he even does anything besides learn about health trends, talk about bodies, science, all the things happening to it. Anytime we talk, I learn so much, and I wanted you guys to have that exact same experience, not only about myself and health, but what I could do and how I could apply that to business and marketing. And I want you guys to have that same access. So with that, I want to bring on somebody that's been teaching people, helping people, and investing tons of time in health, our bodies, and the science and research that we need to know for, probably over 15 years now, 20 years plus probably. But he's actually been on our podcast before. So we have Elwin Robinson. Elwin, how are you doing today, man?
Really good. Yes, exciting times. Happy to be here. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, great to have you. Great to have it. And not only just having a British person, which I just love the damn accents, but of course, it's always great to talk to you. So as I was telling the audience, Elwin, we really want to understand some of the things that are going on in health right now. What are the big changes? What are the things that we should be paying attention to make sure that we could take advantage from a marketing perspective? So I think I already kind of know what this is, but just to cue it up, if there was one thing, what's the biggest thing that you think everybody in health or in this health market, health industry, particularly supplements, and I'd say even alternative health, what's the biggest thing that people should be talking about, thinking about, and paying attention to in their businesses right now?
It's a good question. Well, we can't be certain that what I'm about to say is true, but if it is true, it will have such a huge impact that it's the biggest change in the whole health industry in like over 100 years. So this is potentially a really big deal, and it is the the nomination of RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as the head of Health and Human Services, which is the governmental agency, regulatory agency that oversees all the other health agencies in the US. So including the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, and several other things that people are probably less familiar with. So now, why does that matter? Well, for over 100 years, there's basically been a monopoly on health. This was originally started, a lot of people accuse John D. Rockefeller as being the person who started this. Before that time, so late 1800s, there was lots of different approaches to health. There was homeopathy was quite popular. There was like Christian Science, kind of faith healing things was popular. There was all kinds of herbalism.
Yeah, I think bloodletting didn't stop until the 1960s, where they put leeches on for health stuff. So yeah, definitely early times we had a lot more alternative medicine.
In some biohacking groups I'm going on in 2025, bloodletting is still popular, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. So I don't like leeches, so please don't make that a
not
trend
with leeches,
this year.
no.
Okay, good. Okay,
just
good.
by people like donating blood, but yeah, same principle, right? So yeah, So, it's kind of a free for all. And there was some snake oil salesmen, certainly, but there was also a lot of freedom in terms of if you had a health challenge, there were a lot of places that you could go to. And then, John D. Rockefeller, at the time, there were two, I think they were sometimes referred to as robber barons, or they were the richest people in the world at the time. There was Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. Carnegie made his money from steel. Rockefeller made his money from oil. And so Rockefeller had a huge impact on the world that I'll leave, your viewers to decide on their own, by their own research, if it was overall positive or negative. But one of the things he did is he really streamlined the approach to health and medicine, and basically made it that pharmaceutical products, a lot of which were derived from or dependent upon petrochemicals, which is the connection to oil, and surgery became considered to be the only legitimate source of health interventions. And homeopathy was kind of grandfathered in a little bit because it was such a powerful lobbying group at the time. And that's why even now, if you go to a store and buy homeopathic remedies, it will say drug facts on there. It will treat it as a medicine, which it doesn't do with any other supplement or anything like that. But basically, nutrition, diet, any herbalism was quite popular. Anything like that was branded to be pseudoscience. And the only thing that was legitimate and the only thing that you were allowed to actually make claims for in terms of this will make a difference to your health were, as I said, basically pharmaceutical interventions and surgical interventions in the vast majority of cases. There are specific cases. I mean, with anemia, you're allowed to say iron will help. And, there's a few cases, but the vast majority of cases. So, and that's basically been the case ever since in the US. And that system basically spread throughout the rest of the world through a complicated system of, you probably won't be surprised to know that money and finances,
yes.
bribing, blackmail, all of this kind of thing were, heavily involved. But basically, you ended up in a situation where, 100 years later, throughout the world, pretty much every country in the world, they have a similar system where the only claims that are allowed to be made about health are by medical doctors. Even then, as we discovered during the whole COVID thing, any medical doctor who strays away from the official
designated
allowed,
kind of the
designated. Thank you. The official designated treatment protocols will be again, threatened, bribed, blackmailed, and ultimately fired. They'll lose their research grants, they'll lose their medical license, etc., etc. So there is a prescribed way of doing things, and anyone who deviates from that will not be able to carry on functioning, will be taken down by one of these regulation agencies. As I said, that started in the US, but it spread throughout pretty much the whole world. Now, in some areas of the world, like in India still, Ayurveda, which is a kind of herbal system, is still quite popular. And it's not always in every country as strict as it is in the US, but it's pretty, prevalent. Now, we have...
just so you get, so that's essentially a state of where things have been. So not more than everything, everyone knows and is kind of understands what this world is like, and where some of that push has provided opportunities for alternative health, for supplements, for digital products, to give these opportunities where people could look at that same structure and start to go, maybe this isn't the right way. And I think we really saw that, particularly over the pandemic. It took fire. It had been happening long before that, but we saw a mass adoption of it. Which definitely, of course, leads today. So I just want to kind of recap on that. So continue on.
It could create opportunities for some, but generally the reason why the supplement world and all the rest of it is entrepreneurial, small business marketers and all the rest of it is because the big companies don't want to get involved because it's such a potential regulatory nightmare, and there's a massive restriction on what you're allowed to say. This is why, with everything it says, this product does not diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any disease. That's something that always has to be put on, certainly in the US, but again, most other countries have their version of that and are very strict around that. And so, and that has gone to such extremes that it's certainly not only the US, the EU made a really big push about that, even talking about how changing your diet might improve your health is often like frowned upon. It's considered to be pseudoscience. Like doctors generally won't do it. Basic lifestyle things like getting better sleep, reducing stress, exercise, even these kind of things, you're not allowed to tie them to how they could prevent, treat, or cure any kind of disease, let alone supplements or anything that's a little bit more fringe. It's got really extreme, and in the Europe where we actually went further than you guys. It's like, oh well, you're not allowed to grow your own organic herbs in the garden because because they have to be licensed as a medicine, and in the same way that you're not allowed to grow ibuprofen, you're not allowed to grow Tylenol in your backyard. You're also not allowed to grow herbs. I don't think this was fully instituted, but these were like ideas that they were talking about, and there was protests about it and stuff. So it went really extreme in that direction. Now, enter RFK Jr. RFK, I think most Americans know who he is. He's the son of RFK Sr., who was the brother of JFK, who was the famous president who was assassinated in 1963, the subject of a lot of different conspiracies. It seemed to be not a coincidence that he bucked a lot of trends. He was, anti-war. He was pro-free speech. He was pro intelligence agencies having the deciding say on what went on within the US and in general. And he was pro, criminal organizations. And there's a lot of theories about exactly who assassinated him. But the point is, I guess he had a lot of enemies, and so did his uncle. And so did his brother, RFK, and both of them were assassinated in the 60s. And so RFK Jr. was the son of this assassinated father and assassinated uncle, and he was a lawyer. And he spent most of his career very successfully as an environmental lawyer, where he would sue different companies that were polluting and sue different government agencies that were complicit in that pollution. So, being paid off, being bribed, not enforcing things correctly as they should be, having double standards, all the rest of it. And he was beloved by really the media in general. He cleaned up the Hudson River, for instance, or he was, a pioneer in that whole movement to clean up the Hudson River, because before it was filthy, and now it's not. All that kind of stuff. So he was generally loved. And then around, I think, 15 years ago, he started to get interested in pollution inside the body rather than of the general environment. Specifically, we're focused on jabs. I'm not sure what you can say on here, so I won't go into this in too much detail in case it gets you a problem.
We'll try and keep everything, again, this is all information. We're trying to keep everything all apolitical, guys. So
we're just talking about what happened, right?
Yep.
And so that was kind of what, and then because that was what he became into, like maybe defending those who believed, rightly or wrongly, that they'd been injured by these jabs, suddenly he became an enemy of the mainstream media, who coincidentally, I think about 60 to 70% of their funding comes from pharmaceutical companies. That's interesting. In the US, you are one of the only two countries in the world where pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise on TV shows. And they especially like to advertise on news shows. And the skeptical, cynical conspiracy theorists say this is maybe because once you advertise on a news show, that stops the news show from investigating you and pointing out things that you've done wrong. But, maybe that's a crazy idea, but that's the kind of thought behind it. So anyway, he was just this fringe lunatic. No one paid any attention to him. And he was banned from everywhere as well at the beginning of COVID 2020, along with a bunch of other health influencers who were, quite prominent, but alternative, not approved by the mainstream. And then he decided about a year and a half ago to run for president. And his campaign was not just about health. He was also anti-war, freedom of speech, a lot of traditionally left-wing positions. And he ran, in fact, as a Democrat in the left-wing party in your country. And then they kind of didn't let him run, basically, is the short version of it. And then he decided to run as an independent. Again, very much of a focus on health. And then shortly before the election, he switched again and decided to, first of all, I think, endorse Donald Trump in exchange for Donald Trump being willing to implement his agenda, specifically his agenda around health.
Mm-hmm.
And the agenda around health, he said the agenda that everyone should be able to get behind, like it's not a partisan issue, is the health of children. He talked about, so this is the other point I haven't really talked about, but I should mention quickly. So in that time, from that time, I think it's the 1920s that Rockefeller really cemented this approach to health. 200 years later, we have a reduction in infectious diseases from that time, but we also have a chronic health epidemic. So think 100 years of scientific progress. Think about how much more sophisticated computers are than 100 years ago, how much more sophisticated airplanes are, or TVs, or radios, anything like that. Well,
yeah, we are literally doing a video podcast from different parts of the world. Like, yes, it's changed a lot. Yeah.
And now look at our health outcomes. Are people living any longer than they were 100 years ago? No. Are they any healthier than they were by any metric? No. In fact, by a lot of metrics, especially now, they're actually less healthy. So yes, there is less infectious disease because things like hygiene and antibiotics were successful at that, but there is way more chronic disease. And for instance, with obesity, around 100 years ago, the obesity rate was about 1 or 2%. People on average had a 3,000 calorie diet. They ate a lot of saturated fat. They ate a lot of sugar, even refined sugar. Now, people are on a similar calorie diet, and the obesity rate, at least in the US, is 60%. And it's especially the childhood chronic diseases which were concerning to RFK, and which he won a lot of support for. I think over 50% of children had at least one chronic disease, whereas that was something that was pretty much unheard of, again, 100 years ago. So a lot of ways, while we've had this for our protection policy of, only promoting good, solid, approved narratives like pharmaceuticals and surgery, and not having all of these unapproved pseudoscience lifestyle and supplements and all the rest of it, has it been beneficial to our health? Well, it doesn't seem so. And so there could be various reasons for that. Obviously, it's not necessarily a lack of supplements that's causing the chronic health epidemic, but something is. And so that was Kennedy's pledge, is that he wanted to do the research, which no government agency had been willing to do, to prove what actually is causing this chronic health epidemic in general, and especially among children. The thing that's revolutionary about this is that before that, no politician was talking about this. Left or right, independent, it doesn't matter. No one was addressing this chronic health epidemic. In my country, where I live right now, UK, there's still no politician talking about it. This has not caught on yet. There's any country that I know of, there is no politician who has made, at least even in their top 3 or top 5 agendas, to resolve this chronic health epidemic. And this is just a new concept. Everyone in my community, and probably even your community, Kyle, was like just assumed, the food is poisoning us, and the drugs are poisoning us, and we're really unhealthy, and doctors don't really help, and that's just the way it is. So actually now someone has come along and gone, why is it that way? Why are we putting up with this? And it's been very interesting. And I've seen, now other politicians, at least in the US, are starting to catch on to this. And I just saw the other day, there was a particular congresswoman who put a bill into Congress about restricting seed oils, high fructose corn syrup, and artificial additives and preservatives, which are damaging in food. And this is one of the other things, RFK went on to all these podcasts, but I think also Fox News, and he was talking about how, like, all these, like the same products, like whether it's like a Fanta or a Fruit Loops or a granola bar or whatever it might be, in the US, you guys have all these chemicals in that are banned in Canada and in the EU and in the UK and all the rest of it. Like, you guys just have so many more toxic chemicals in your food supply and in your water supply than we do, because it's allowed, and because often they're addictive or they're cheaper or whatever. And so he was like, this could be the cause of the chronic disease epidemic, at least to some degree. But, let's do the research and let's find out. Now, I was following all this with a lot of excitement as someone who's obviously passionate about this. And I'm, my mission in life is to really help with the chronic disease epidemic. I have my own system and my own whatever that I help people with. But, I don't have anywhere near the reach that obviously someone like RFK does. So I was fantastically excited to see this. But still, he was a fringe candidate. Your country is like a two-party system, right? And he wasn't running as the presidential candidate for either. So I was like, I'm glad he's bringing awareness to it, but probably nothing's going to happen. But then he made this deal with the Republicans and Donald Trump specifically that he would be allowed to kind of take charge of health in exchange for his endorsement and kind of bringing his people over. And then Donald Trump won the presidential election. He won by a margin which was quite convincing, but you could argue that if he hadn't have had all RFK supporters on his side, that might not have happened. He might not have won by such a big margin. He might even not have won at all. So this was, a decisive part. And sure enough, President Trump did follow through on, I guess, the promise that he made him, and he did nominate him to be basically in charge of all the health agencies in the U.S. government. And so this, if it happens,
real fast,
will
I
have
want
a
to take a quick
huge impact.
I want to take a quick pause on that before we go into what that impact will be, because I just want to because we covered a lot of ground there. And I think one of the big things here, just for everyone to kind of know that gets in with your excitement, is what we're really seeing is mass awareness around something that has almost always been utilized, like you said, as a bit of fringe, right? We know the primary demographics and health in the supplement field is normally people are a little bit older, probably your Fox News watching crowd that also buy pharmaceutical drugs quite a bit, or at least targeted. But we always know that, hey, they're not happy. You could find maybe different routes. There's different things, so on and so forth. But that was always in these fringes. And what you're seeing is the fringe come to mainstream. And that could be very exciting, right? We're seeing all these things that felt like they were tucked away here, making it into this, what was previously only held by the pharmaceutical space, potentially at least. There's somebody that would like to talk about that. That's at least kind of the way I'm thinking about it. So that being said, this could be huge. Now let's talk about it more specifically.
Yeah, the awareness thing is one thing that is very exciting. As I said, I thought that was all that was really going to happen. I was like, at least some politician is talking about it. They're getting following. They're getting, excitement. That's great. That's something. I didn't really think that they were actually going to be able to make a difference. And so, that's exciting. Just to comment on what you said there for a second, I don't think it is only the conservatives. If I want to go out and eat in a healthy restaurant.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just saying to our audience of demographics. No, I agree with you. And we'll get to that. That I think the bigger thing and the awareness is quite a bit larger.
Health was actually traditionally a liberal thing or a left-wing thing until at least relatively recently. If you want to go into a healthy restaurant, or you're much more likely to find it in a liberal state than you are in a conservative state.
There's a lot more vegan restaurants in California than there is Texas, right?
I don't know about healthy, but grass-fed, organic, whatever, all of that kind of stuff, right?
All started on that side. You're right. Yep.
Yeah. It's I'd say that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who have become aware of health, but it was always just this is just the way it is kind of thing. What's exciting is that there's a possibility, and this is why I decided to create my new show, which you'll probably allow me to promote at the end, to really follow this process, to keep people up to date about what is happening, what could be happening, to anticipate what's going on. Because if RFK Jr. follows up on what he promises to, and I'll just read you it's just a paragraph, if that's okay, Carl, but one statement that he made. Just after he won the election, along with Donald Trump. So this is RFK's statement. The FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamins, clean foods, sunshine, exercise, nutraceuticals, and anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by pharma. If you work for the FDA and are part of this corrupt system, I have two messages for you. One, preserve your records, and two, pack your bags. Now, that's a very strong statement, right? This is not we're going to go in there and reform things and stuff like that. This is a complete revolution, a complete overhaul, a 180 flip of focus, right? Because the focus of, and this is not exclusive to the FDA or health agencies, generally the focus of every regulatory agency is to be the enforcement arm of the industry that they're supposed to be regulating.
Mm-hmm.
This is true. The EPA is actually the enforcement arm for the polluters. It just goes on and on. Like every agency that's supposed to be regulating is really more advocating for the agenda of the agency. Of the biggest corporations involved. And some people have a struggle to get their head around that a bit. They're like, surely these businesses would prefer that there's no regulations. Surely these regulatory agencies that are creating more and more regulations, they can't be serving the industry, because surely the industry doesn't like the regulations. But what they don't understand is that every regulation is something else which is costly to comply with. And so if you are a big company, you're an Amazon, you're a Tesla, you're a whatever, either political side. If you're a big company, generally you want to get as close to a monopoly as possible. You don't want competition, right? Because someone easily could take over. And so the best way of maintaining that is to make it so difficult to be in the space that the only people who can keep up with all the regulations are the people who have the most money, the biggest companies. So the more regulations that there are, even if they're stupid and arbitrary and all the rest of it, the better it is. Now, second of all, if you can also make those regulations favor you and unfavor your competition, all the better. And so in the case of the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies, the FDA basically supports the pharmaceutical companies' agenda, and anyone who is not a pharmaceutical company, they will be suppressed. That's basically the way it's been. So that's why the statement from RFK, and he lists all these different things that the FDA has been at war on. And notable on this list, of course, people in our industry, are the words vitamins and nutraceuticals. That's exactly.
Or the one I like even more, anything that can't be patented that could improve someone's health. Because I'm like, gray zones. But yeah, I think I want to talk, because that was the part when I heard that from a marketer and for our industry, I thought, holy cow, like this, the wheels start turning like this. That just mean the regulatory in terms of what you can say and structure function claims. Like, are we going to see a substantial change there? Are we going to see an opening of the claims, which, I know my marketing brain, like it's like fist pumping, excited. It feels like you just have this freedom to go. But at the same time, I feel like there could be some downsides to that. So, because I think at the same time, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this, because we could see a lot of opening. You were mentioning before in this idea of the monopoly, you want to close the door. A part of having things where you're trying to sell stuff on the fringe and so on and so forth. Like if you're like, hey, this is kind of outside the scope, or I want to be as close to regulatory compliance as I humanly can, that risk factor mitigates the size of competition, how many people you're competing against. If all of a sudden that is less risky, what starts to happen in terms of competition and in terms of the funding that goes towards this stuff? So kind of curious, I mean, is that a concern for you? Do you have any basis and anticipation that could be something that starts to happen?
Absolutely. So if I look at it from a altruistic, philanthropic, caring about the world point of view, I feel like the more that this agenda that I just gave an example with is enacted, the better, right? It will help to resolve the chronic disease epidemic to some degree. The more that there is a openness to genuinely researching and testing the validity of all these alternatives to the pharmaceutical approach, like the ones that I just listed, right? That's a very good thing. But absolutely, Kyle, from our point of view, if you are a supplement seller, if you're an affiliate of supplements, we have to be aware of the fact that so when there is a large amount of regulation, what tends to happen is that the business world will tend to bifurcate into two extremes. There will be the ones who have the monopoly, and then there'll be the kind of, as you say, gray area ones who are, small enough not to be worth bothering with, which is probably what all the clickbank sellers will be under. And there is not a lot in the middle. There's not a lot of medium-sized businesses, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, if we have a situation where, and I don't think RFK is going to suddenly come and say you can say whatever you want, but nor would I want that. Like, I hate, and unfortunately, a lot of those people who are maybe beyond gray and just in, like black market, I hate it when I see supplement claims that are like, this will cure you overnight. This will instantly do this. I'm like, I just, I hate seeing that stuff as well. And so
Yes.
that's what we
Like
have,
the FDA's
unfortunately, right?
creation was because there was a guy shoving goat testicles in people's scrotum and saying it was fixing their infertility. So,
Yeah.
and broadcasting on AM radio. So it's like, yeah, like there can be stuff that obviously is very bad to say. So, no, you're very right. We can't just go too extreme, but
I don't believe that was why the FDA was crazy. I believe that's the excuse. But yeah, I read Dan
no,
Kennedy's
gotcha.
book on that, so I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the history of that
Yeah.
particular story. Yeah. Yeah. So what will probably happen if there is not a complete free for all, but if there is okay, you can start actually making claims that are backed up by research, and we're going to change the incentive structure so that, because that's the problem. The whole patenting system is really the problem. So, it's a problem for everyone, even the pharmaceutical companies. The fact that you have to kind of spend several billion in order to prove the validity of a drug, again, it creates this monopolistic environment where hardly anyone can afford to actually do that. But it means that there's not a lot of research into natural things in comparison, including, herbs, vitamins, minerals, stuff like that. But honestly, there is a decent amount of research into them. I do this research quite frequently, and yet we are not allowed to use any of that research to support any of what we're selling. Right? We're not allowed to make any claims related to that research. So I would say that's what would make sense to liberalize. So not that you can suddenly start saying, this supplement will whatever cure your arthritis, but we can just say this supplement contains this amount of curcumin, and there is a study showing that this amount of curcumin is equally as effective as Tylenol at reducing pain, and here's the study, right? Like that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. It's just quoting a study, but we're not even allowed to do that at the moment because it will sound like a claim. So I think that's probably what's more likely, is just that we can be more reasonable. But I think if that is the case, go back to your original question, then yeah, a lot of other businesses that have a lot more resources of all kinds, money, connections, customer base, manufacturing capacity, all that kind of stuff, may well start looking at these spaces, supplements, but also other stuff I mentioned with the peptides, psychedelics, whatever. And we'll start saying, maybe we could start to get into the business of that. And so I do actually believe that as this good stuff is happening, where there's more and more research into these natural compounds, because there's being incentivized for there to be more research, and as there's more and more allowing a reasonable level of claims about those natural compounds, that those of us who are already in this space are going to have more and more competition. And so I actually think that's ultimately a good thing, because there's a lot of things about the current industry, like direct response supplement industry, that I don't really love, that we can talk about if you want. But short to medium term, it could definitely it will cause pain for people who are not aware of these trends. They're not aware of what's coming, who try and do things in the same old way as they've done them up until now. And I think we're already seeing that. You and I have talked about that in the last year or two. Selling things in the same very unelegant, unsophisticated way as used to work, I think is working less and less well. I think people are becoming more and more informed and more sophisticated, as compared to before anyway. Maybe they're still not very sophisticated, and in their understanding of all this kind of stuff. And so I think we need to up our game in specific ways to not get left behind. And on the positive side, if we up our game in all the right ways, and then we're not hamstrung by these regulatory agencies refusing to allow us to give any genuine benefits of anything that we sell, potentially, there's a huge opportunity there as well.
Yeah. No, and I think that's one of the things that it could be. This could be one of those things that becomes one person's nightmare and one person's life-changing opportunity, depending on how you approach it. Because where I totally agree, I think there's going to be an increase in competition, and the competition is going to be from those mid-tier or even large health providers that now see an opportunity to increase their claims and what they're willing to say. But they have the funding and large pocketbooks to still push that out and push out a lot of media into a lot of different sources. So the one nice thing about that, though, that people need to remember is large companies don't move fast. They have a large bureaucracy. They're going to sit and wait because a lot of money means that you could move fast once you feel guaranteed. We'll just dump money. We'll acquire our way into whatever market we want to get into, and so on and so forth. So where I think
they also don't like to take risk, right? That's the other
they don't,
key
yeah,
thing.
Because at the end of the day, corporations are primarily made with a lot of people that just want to keep their jobs or get promoted. And you take a risk that feels like a guaranteed risk more often than what an entrepreneur would do, which is I'm going to take a risk and an opportunity because I think it might work, and failure is okay because I'll just try again and again and again, which means right now, as we see shift, because I think the biggest thing is, and this is, again, apolitical, RFK in this nomination represents a change, a shift that probably a lot of people never thought we'd see, but we'll remove that aside. Just it's something's going to happen. And I think
I just want to clarify. I'd be equally excited about this if he joined with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris and they made the same deal with him. As far as I'm concerned, this is good no matter what party it's happening in.
Well, and again, for me, it's change. And one of the cool things I really think that you mentioned earlier, and where this could be really big, is we mentioned before, because I think the way the markets were structured, we kind of had a lot of these conversations targeting a specific type of consumer because they were the ones that would take and accept that information. But as we see things shift, and I would say that what was once called pseudoscience becomes what feels to the broader audience as something that is new science, becomes a massive opportunity to broaden who you could target. And one of the things you said earlier that I think is a really, really big focus and one that gets me very, very excited is a lot of this is targeting people that have, like, we already know something about the target demographic that matters the most, that's most sensitive to this, which is people that have kids. Because you mentioned before, the RFK kind of model that was the biggest was, why are all these kids so sick? So who do you think cares a lot about that? Moms, right? Moms, grandmothers, the ones that they're going to be the primary ones that, again, this is not obviously it's different in every single home, but in general, more often than not, into these audiences are the ones that are buying the food, they're buying the products, they're consuming the information and making the decisions for their kids and their household. So what I'd say for you, what that means is you have a new category that you could go after in this burgeoning group of just moms in the United States that are concerned about their children's health. Pretty broad category. It could be grandmas as well, but you have a very, very large category to focus on that right now has probably been hampered by a lot of different factors, right? But there's real opportunity to go a lot more broad with using science research. And I would say the big thing is branding is one of those opportunities. Now is the time to run up and be aggressive. And I want to say it's not the Wild West, but it is a bit of a gold rush because you're going to have a limited window of time. It's not going to be forever. And if you go after it and you start watching it, seeing the trends, paying attention, and really focusing on understanding that, a couple of years from now, if I focus on more maybe using research, cleaning up, being more branded, and knowing and maybe trusting that I'm going to also have the ability to maybe, like you said, use more research, use more claims that previously I couldn't, that are still safe, still not hurting anybody, not black hat. We're not shoving ghost testicles and people's scrotums saying that they're going to have kids now. Nothing like that, but still within reasonable things that, boy, if you could use your direct response marketing skills, but now be able to say more and keep things branded, you could go really, really fast and ascend yourself into a whole different stratosphere, to whole different markets. And we just mentioned before, most likely big companies, they want to, alleviate risk. So they'll probably just gobble up companies that go into that mid-tier. And so whether you want to keep growing or you want to get your business acquired, if you focus on these trends right now, I think you have stand a very good chance to be early, to be quick, and get your business acquired in lots of different ways, whether it's some of these new products, whether it's vitamins and nutrients you're already selling and just transitioning into this realm and kind of delving into it. I think it's something to be very excited, and is definitely something people should be paying attention to and starting to shift their marketing towards it. Even if it's pulse checking your audience, your buyers, who's interested, who's talking about it, create an email with the survey. Hey, maybe even that post in there, like, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please send us back and we'll get, give a coupon to anybody, like a 10% off coupon for anyone that replies to you. What does this make you think? How do you feel? Start getting a sense of what your audience is talking about with this stuff. What are they feeling about with it? Go out to your local grocery stores. Go out to I would say go to an elementary school and see what the moms at Mom's Pickup are saying, but that might just make you a creep if you don't have kids. But go to find a Facebook group on like a mommy blog group on like Facebook or something like that. Start seeing how people are having these conversations. Look at those markets, and when you see a large shift, I would say this way: think of shifting rocks. When you move a bunch of rocks around, space is created. And you can move through that space upwards or downwards, but those rocks are moving no matter what. So you're either going to just shake down to the bottom or you're going to ascend in that space through the top. It's really up to you in terms of what you're focusing on. So I will say, you mentioned the show, and I want to talk about a couple more things, but if you're really interested and you want to be in depth and following along with this, but maybe you're not going to be able to, you're not a big researcher, you don't understand all the documents, but you want it simplified, aggregated, and easy to understand. Your new show is going to do that and so much more. So strongly recommend people go check that out. At the end, we'll give them an opportunity to how they could do that. That's really, really exciting. I think any marketer out there that wants to be different in 2025, they want to find a new avenue, particularly in health, as we see this market shift. That show and that information is going to be really, really, really critical. So that being said, I want to some other things I want to talk about is definitely just some other trends out there. So we know watching RFK, that's a big thing. Everyone, it's probably not the last conversation we're going to have about this. I know I'm really watching with a lot of curiosity, given how much exposure we have in the health space, because I want to see what happens when it looks like. But already I'm in my mind trying to prep for wherever that shift is, because I could see the movement, I could see the traction. And I think if you're not paying attention to it, you're gonna be really, really regretting it. It's like Mark Zuckerberg walking up to you and say, would you like to buy Facebook stock, 10 years ago or 15 years ago? I feel like I'm aging myself because it's probably 20 years ago at this point. And if you just said, nah, think how much you'd regret that now, right? I think this is one of those times. If you don't focus and you don't look at these moves, you might as well just be sitting in a regret 5 years from now. So with that, though, let's talk about some other trends in health. It might be a little different that you're seeing around, whether it's maybe some new products or maybe new health trends you're starting to see. That might be great for content or for people to start looking to for maybe even some new products.
So I could definitely do that, but I think before that, I could address like a big trend. I think which will relate to what we just talked about previously. That I think marketers need to know, the viewers and listeners need to know. So I would say that people are becoming more and more informed, and there are specific consequences of that to future-proof your business, as we talked about earlier, you should be aware. Like you've just talked about all the opportunities, Carl, which are correct, but there's also, I think, warnings of how you could easily be left behind if you're already in this business or you try and do things the way that they've been done before. So I see a lot of people selling, direct response marketing supplements, and they don't even tell you what's in the supplement. Sometimes they don't even give you a list of ingredients, or maybe they do, but they don't give you a supplements fact panel. So I would never dream. I buy loads of supplements to test. I would never dream of buying anything without knowing what's in it. And that's me. Obviously that's not a lot of people, because plenty of people have been successful selling supplements without telling people what's in it. But I think that is a change. That is a trend which is already changing and will change more and more. And it's more a reflection of a bigger focus. So I think, if you think of yourself as primarily only a marketer, like my focus is on marketing, then that's fine if that's your focus and your skill and all the rest of it. But you need someone in your business whose primary focus is product. So product quality, product safety, product uniqueness in the marketplace, all of those kind of things. Whereas I think a lot of marketers have been able to get away with a long time the kind of attitude in this space of, all right, let's put 95% of the time, energy, and focus into the marketing, and then we'll just buy some generic off-the-shelf product. And it doesn't matter that it's got nothing interesting in it, and it doesn't matter that it's got a bunch of fillers in that are not good for you, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't work, and it doesn't matter that it's the same as what a bunch of other people are also selling, because no one's even looking at what's in it, right? Yeah. That's something that I think is definitely going to change. I think people are more and more. So a couple of things. First of all, I think people are just going to be paying attention to what's in it. That's the first and foremost thing. Within that, I think there's a couple of things. People... I said that just in the last few months, people are starting to talk about what's in food. Like there's all these dyes and preservatives
Yep.
and all of that kind of thing. I think the same thing is already happening in supplements, and it's going to be happening more and more in supplements. I see
Yeah.
more and more people like, does it have magnesium stearate in it? Does it have silicon dioxide in it? Does it have titanium dioxide in it? Like, is it GMO? Like, all of those kind of things. At the moment, it's still a fairly small percentage of people who have those concerns, admittedly, which is why a marketer today can get away with ignoring that. My prediction in terms of future trends, because there's going to be people, if everything rolls out the way that I'm expecting it to, there's going to start being senators and experts and congress people, all the rest of it, on TV, and there's going to be influencers on YouTube and TikTok and all the rest of it talking about, are you still buying supplements of silicon dioxide? Like it's going to start being a trend, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're not aware of that, you're going to, oh, my conversions are down. Why are they down? So that's one thing I think that people
Yeah.
should be aware of.
Yeah. I want to build on because I do think that's actually, again, a really good, it's a good defense, but also a really good opportunity. And I think there's two things in there. One,
Yeah.
and I will always caution this, that this is me spitballing copy. It's not me saying that this is the way you would say this compliantly. So please make sure to submit your stuff to your ClickBank compliance team or to your FDA lawyer before you go out and run this out. But like, to me, it thinks it's a great opportunity to create that marketing angle and actually start the conversation, right? Hey, have you wondered why, like the supplements in your pantry right now, do you know what's actually in them? Do any of those bottles say this? Do any of these bottles say this? Do you know that this and this and this? And you start putting in information to add that seed where previously, we threw those darts. Oftentimes you don't want to say the enemy is the pharmaceutical company. Well, what if the enemy now is just all the supplements that aren't high enough quality? As you said, I think the trend we're already seeing is this trend of what's in the food we're putting in our body, but that's going to extend to what's in the medicine we're putting in our body, what's in the nutrients we're putting, what's in the vitamins we're putting in our body, right?
Yes.
And as we see more and more people flood into the market, and now you have more decisions to make, it's not just the story, but the product quality is really going to matter. And speaking to that first and being the one that could drive and be on that movement, I think could be really good, particularly when no one is having that conversation. Now, always split test these things, but I think that'd be a really interesting thing. And the way to think about it is like, hey, you're probably thinking, I've heard this, or I bought so many supplements before and they didn't work. Have you actually looked at the label? Do you see any of these things on them? And you could pick some very inflammatory things. People probably won't look at them, but they think, oh, that sounds really bad. You sell the story of knowing, hey, you need to expect more. It's not a good enough to just grab any supplement now just because it's out there. Remember this and this and this. So it's a great differentiator. You're going with a conversation that's bubbling right now. And if you're leading that, I think you could take advantage of some really, really great conversions. So
Yep.
huge. And I think the other part of that too is product quality and LTV. If you don't have somebody giving you high quality products, because this is an opportunity again, where if you do a high quality product that people keep buying because now it's a different solution for them and more viable, and you're getting a different level of consumer, because a lot of these people that we sold to in the past are very impulsive, right? But now as we see this awareness grow, there's a lot of people that like to be dedicated to what they buy. So if you have a high quality product, a great story, and you know how to position things with some different acquisitions, a little bit different, you could attract a whole new group of people that have higher LTV. And again, change your business, which is going to make you more valuable to be purchased, make a lot more money, blah, blah, blah. But I think there's a really good opportunity to take that angle of, hey, do you know what's in this bottle? Because we do. We're about to tell you, and here's why you should care. Could be really,
Yeah.
really great. Maybe not as a lead, but definitely within your
No,
copy, I would put that in there.
I think it's just a claim, like right now you might say, manufactured in the US. I think in future you're going to be, say no fillers and excipient, no silicon dioxide, no whatever it is that becomes the thing that you don't want in there, right? I think another thing, and there are companies already doing this, and I see that their only differentiator is that they don't have that stuff in there, and that's all they do to market, and they sell a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the next level of that is to do your own third-party testing, which I know is not done nearly as often as it probably should be. And so that's another thing that I see more and more in different groups and forums and all the rest of it. But like that's one of the most common questions that people have. Is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? And so as you said, Carl, you encapsulated perfectly there. The more people start to think, wait, is the food I'm eating safe? Wait, are the drugs I'm taking from the doctor safe? They're also going to have that question about the supplements. And if you don't have a good answer for that, it's going to be a problem. But as you just said, you always flip things positively, Carl, which I love about you. You were like actually showing people that it is safe, right? That's a badge. That's that's a bump.
Yeah.
That's a conversion bump. It really, it's never going to suppress conversion to show people, say, with a simple infographic, that does not contain this, or showing a link to your COA or something like that. That's never going to suppress conversion. At the most, it's going to do nothing. But it very often will actually increase conversion.
Yeah. Well, I think we might see it now more than it has in the past, because I know tried things and you'll put a tag on there. It didn't seem like it did much. But I think there's ways it could open up whole new markets for you that we might be seeing. So, and again, these are all speculation because we're talking about being early. And remember, early isn't being right. It's just guessing right. So you're going to take some hits, and sometimes you think it's a fastball and it's a sinker. So you might just miss. That's okay. You keep trying. And I think these trends, there's going to be lots of different stuff. Can you think of, I want to give one more.
In terms of a loss, Kyle, I mean, like not having fillers in there often costs you no money. You've just got to remember to ask for it from the person manufacturing for you. And in terms of the test, we're talking about a few $100s. Like, it's and as a result of that, you have the peace of mind of knowing that your product is safe. I'd say really there's a lot to be gained and there's very little to be lost from doing these things.
Yeah. I was more saying, like, I don't want anyone to think I'm guaranteeing that this is going to work. Just, hey, I think there's really a worth a try and something.
Yeah.
So I want to give one more trend, and then we're coming up close to an hour or so. We'll talk a little bit about the show, what they should do. But yeah, let's get one more good trend or one more thing to focus on. And then there's actually, I would say, yep, nope, we're just going to go with that one trend. We'll go with there. Sorry, I was like thinking, can I fit this one thing in? I was like, nah, it's going to be too much. I'll have to save for another time.
Well, I think, relating again to something that's relevant for your audience, people who are already, selling stuff. A trend that I would look at would be that because generic stuff is going to become more and more ubiquitous, the more competition is, the more important it is that you actually have something that's unique. And I would say the other thing is to have studies which are actually relevant. And so I know that a lot of people already put links to studies in there at at the bottom of the page or whatever, but a lot of the time I click on those a lot. The study's like completely unrelated to the claim being made, or like maybe a best case scenario, they're just being tests on mice or something like that. So we see in the popularity already of people like Andrew Huberman, who despite doing long, very dense and technical.
I would always say arduous podcast.
Yeah, you could say that. Podcast.
I feel like I need a notepad. I'm like, holy crap. So yeah.
Very popular because he gives a lot of scientific justification for everything he's doing, and it's genuine, it's real, right? He's using well-designed studies that have humans and all the rest of it. Now, again, as I said, at this point, I know very few people are actually checking that, but I would say a future trend is if you make sure that you choose ingredients that are of the right type and quality, so not the cheapest type. For instance, when it comes to herbs, if you've just got the herb, like the dried up powdered herb in there, there's probably no research showing it's effective because it's probably not. But if you have it like standardized to a specific amount of this constituent that has been shown in a scientific study that actually does something, or it's a specific extract that's a specific concentration. And then the other thing is quantities. A lot of people, they put a bunch of different ingredients in there because the ingredient itself has some studies saying that it's successful, that it can work. But the amount that they put in there is so little that there's no way it would actually work. So I think actually the trend is more and more, and I see it more and more in the industry, that people want to know, not just does it contain this, but how much does it contain? Is it the right type? Is it the right concentration? Has it got the right amount of this? And again, as I said, I realize at this point, depending on your market, this is maybe 1 to 10% of people, and probably you're closest to the 1% if you're more the impulse buyer type of customers. Yep. But I'm saying, I think that over time, this one may take a little bit longer than the safety one. But my prediction would be in 5 years' time, there's going to be a lot of focus on that. And the other thing, just quickly, that I'd encourage your customers, your clients, viewers, listeners, whatever, clickbank customers, I guess, to do is to look into unique ingredients. If you can get something that no one else is currently selling or that is not ubiquitous, because the other thing that's going to be happening more and more is that they're going to look at your formula and they're going to go to Amazon, they're going to go to eBay, they're going to go to Google, and they're going to go, can I basically get the same thing somewhere else significantly cheaper? And so you have to have something to differentiate, or you're going to more and more have to have something to differentiate yourself that actually is real.
Yeah, because I mean, a good example of that would be like turmeric, right? Like when there was a while, turmeric was a novel, a novel vitamin, and then it quickly became commoditized to where if you have just a solo turmeric supplement, good luck selling that because there's a cajillion out there and people are just going to go to the lowest price unless they're, I mean, it limits your market. So no, I think unique is huge. And I want to go back to the other thing you're talking about, because I think one thing, and this is where I want to go back to, follow the conversations, particularly with markets that might be a little bit new, because I think there's ways that you could inform the consumer in your copy. And we do it all the time, right? I might have a fear that something's wrong. I might have a concern and a fear. If I give the fear a voice that sounds reasonable, logical, and now I need to pay attention to, it's going to be better. So if we go and we talk about, let's go back to the research, which one I think is interesting for the trends and maybe the future of compliance, which would be really exciting. But then the second side to it is you're setting and differentiating against a sea of new competition, something that's different about your product. And I would even put it this way. I'd say when you're referencing a study in your copy, say, hey, in this study, they did it on humans, not mice, which, by the way, is very important because I'm not a mouse and I want the results for a human being, right? And so you're already putting copy in there. I put it in language that people would want to understand. Listen, like, again, it's like, if you want to say whatever it might be, like, I hope you don't think of yourself a mouse, and I like research done on actual safe research. So I know my product's going to work and it's going to be safe for me. And so you say it's been done on this, and this research was done on humans for this amount of this nutrient or whatever it is. Because now you come back and you say it's this amount. Now you don't have to tell people that, hey, if it's any more, any less, it's not proven to work. And so that's one of those things where, like, that's we want to make sure you get the precise amount that you need for the results that you want. And so that's one of those things when you actually put language to that. You have to remember, if they believed you and you're engaged and you've written good copy up until then, you now given them a benchmark to accept against competition anywhere else. So now I know what I need. I love the idea and I have a specificity of what I need to look for. You don't need to tell people that, but you do tell them that by putting in the copy. So I think that's a thing to play around with, and very, very minor switches. And you put a great example of Huberman's already showed us that there's a capacity for that. I'll tell you guys what things we've seen on the ClickBank side. We have seen that scientific curiosity in 2024 in the health side seemed to do better than pain and drama, which worked much, much better in 21 and 22. And started fading in 23. And now people looked at this idea, and I'm going to go back this term again. As you said, what used to be pseudoscience now feels like new science. And new science is credible and exciting. So one of the reasons why you talk about, and I'll give one other trend, the fact that, too, we talk about how, I will say, not the conspiratorial idea, but I think when you advertise things on the news, it increases the legitimacy of what you're consuming, right? Because we look at news as a credible source of information. And so for advertise something, it's like you're just getting a bleed off of that feeling of credibility. I only bring this up, though, that we have to remember that and I've mentioned this in some other podcasts, but they did Pew Research company did something recently where they showed that 60% of conservatives, this is conservatives, but they do not consume their news from traditional media sources. It's all non-traditional. So I bring that up, that when you bring that science aspect, you kind of bring that more mature sophistication to alternative markets of news, you're going to fit right in on a tried and true 100-year-old system that we know works for conversions. So again, apolitical, just know that this is something that's changing and there's real opportunity there. And I really love what you said. There's great opportunity to kind of maybe set the tone, find the language, and be first on speaking to it on some of these new things. So you're speaking on stage talking about the great conversion changes that you had and made your business so much better into 2025. So with that, this is awesome, man. I feel like I had to stop because I realized we're going to talk for 2 hours and we're just scratching the surface on exciting
Carl, can I add
things.
one more?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so one more, because I think everything I said for now is kind of obvious-ish to someone who's aware of the industry, and so I just want to put a little bit more of a novel one in
Right.
there for people.
Super secret, super advanced. All right.
And I really think, and you and I have discussed this before, Carl, but the future of all this is personalization. And so what that means is the idea of, and again, just as with drugs, the idea that one size fits all of anything, let's say an antihistamine, an antacid, like why should a 100-pound woman have exactly, just take 2 tablets as a 300-pound guy of, for instance, right? Of anything, of an antibiotic, of an antihistamine, of anything. And so I think that is going to come more and more into the forefront the more that we go, like realizing that everyone's different. Obviously, it's not just about size or gender. It's about how old you are. It's about all kinds of things. And
Right.
so the
How your
trend
liver
already,
processes toxins, stuff like that, right?
yeah, exactly. So the trend is already in the, what's the word? The fringes, the biohacking, whatever, is already very
Yeah.
much towards personalization. There's very
Yeah.
few of people on the cutting edge anymore who are taking standard amounts of anything. All of
Hmm.
us, what we're doing is we are testing and we are checking. And with Brian Johnson, we
Oh yeah,
said
that
we maybe
Netflix
talk
guy.
about him, but
Yep.
he's the Do Not Die guy. He just had a Netflix documentary come out.
Hmm.
He's dedicating several $1 million a year because he got rich, I think, creating the company Braintree, which
Yeah.
was then sold to PayPal. His focus is test, and then do stuff. And I don't quite agree with his approach, but I'm very happy that he's doing it. To just be testing stuff and putting stuff out there. And I think that attitude of testing and personalizing is going to be huge. Now,
Yeah.
I believe that so much. I have one of my companies is genetic testing, right? People
Hmm.
test their genetics, and then based on that, they will take all kinds of steps, lifestyle, dietary, and also supplements. And so, if you're interested in plugging something like that into your business, then reach out to me. That is an option. Um, you can also, there are various companies out there, not mine, that you could perhaps integrate with that will, offer blood tests. So it could be a blood test, or even a urine test, or a saliva test, or something like that, and you could plug your supplements in as the back end of that. Now, if all of that sounds like it's a bit, genetics or blood tests is a bit outside your remit, you just want to stick to supplements. I think even within that, there's scope for personalization that I'm already seeing a bit, right? There's more and more cases, and I see it even with native traffic and hardly the most sophisticated traffic sources, where they're getting people to do questionnaires, right? And then based on maybe a
Yep.
10-part questionnaire, they'll then recommend something. And I think this is smart. I think this is the way it's going. I think that more and more people are going to be wary and not believe in a one size fits all for various reasons, for logical reasons, because of these examples that I'm talking about. But also, the most obvious reason is because they've probably already tried a bunch of supplements before and had it not work. And so when they see yours, yeah, if you hit an emotional pain point, yeah, if you have a very, interesting mechanism of action, yeah, if you have a unique ingredient, all of these can help. But if you can show them that what you are selling is specifically relevant to them, that I think makes the selling process so much easier. And as I said, I think right now it's a value add. It's like an edge you could get if you apply it today. But I think in not that many years' time, if you're not doing it, you're going to be left out in the cold. I think everyone's going to be doing it.
Totally agree with you. And in fact, I want to switch what you said a little bit from customize to curated. Customized takes a lot to do potentially. Sometimes that could be hard. Curated limits what maybe you show, but creates the experience that people really want. And I'll even kind of bring some, and I think eventually you could get to fully customized, but in the short run, that might be hard. But you
Yeah,
could
just to
curate with
clarify,
AI.
customized, I don't
Yeah,
mean that every bottle is different. What I mean is that what you are offered is based on something about you, whether it's
correct.
genetics, blood, or even just your answers to a questionnaire.
Yep. Yep. And that's what I was gonna say. I think when you look at so give you guys an idea, like we know that there's a large portion of people that are growing in terms of their descent towards maybe large medicine. But at the same time, we have seen, and it's consistent in surveys, people trust doctors, particularly their doctor. Even if they've had a good experience with that doctor and they're going to them regularly, they will still trust them on an individual basis, even if they don't always agree with what what that is. And I think a lot of the reason why is because they feel there's a curated experience. They have a source of trust and information that they don't understand, and they want to feel safe in that process. So I would say that's where when you're building in your supplements, you want to differentiate. And I actually saw we had a client that or lead as interactive with. They were out converting so many other health offers in the space, and they did it with a survey. They were using a questionnaire to bring people in, and it created this customized, curated experience where you feel taken care of, and almost simulating at scale that doctor curated trust experience. I could ask questions, and that's where I'd go back to the idea of like using AI to create and surveys to create some sort of curated experience that feels like somebody's not just selling you the same thing to everybody, but I'm selling you the best results that we could possibly get you for you, right? That curation, ask me your questions, let me really understand you and give that back. And I would tell you again, I know I've said this like a billion times on the podcast, and I'll say it again because I just think it's really important for people. AI is nice for efficiencies, but it's a lot better if you unleash it on your customers to create relationships with them. That's what it does better than anything. It knows how to talk and connect and think what the person it's talking to wants to see. So if you look at that through curation of supplements, creating high quality stuff, and you pair those together, I think you could have a massively differentiating product that could blow things out. And again, you'd be early on this. It's heading that direction because you're totally right. It's been in the top, not the top, it's in the top tier of spend right now. So the wealthiest people are all spending tons of money, and it's continuing to trickle down, but it's all mass amount of money on that is personalized medicine, right? Very, very specific. And so it's going to trickle down. Be first with what people want in that experience. So again, this is great. I mean, we can make this like a 2-hour podcast. Maybe if we do it again next time, that will be what we have to do. But I really want people to know, because if they want to continue on with this, they want to continue to hear this, as they all should, and follow along on a weekly basis with these updates. Tell the people again, what's the show and where can they watch it?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So we're going to be live on YouTube. My channel is just my name, Elwin Robinson, youtube.com/Elwin Robinson. And we'll be live every Saturday starting the 25th of January at 3 p.m. EST. So if you go to my channel, make sure you subscribe, click the notification.
That bell.
And then we'll probably release clips afterwards as well. But yeah, to get the full episode, it's best to join live. I may also be able to get it on X or something, but YouTube's the one that I'm definitely going to be on. And just a brief recap, it will not be high-level conversation like this because, we're trying to sum up the whole industry. It's basically going to be, in the last week, what's changed in terms of regulations, what's changed in terms of scientific breakthroughs, and what's interesting in terms of culture, So that's what it will be.
Yeah. So a little punchy. We get those quick updates to whether it's like, hey, I need some inspiration on some content to write this week, or if you just want to keep up to date, or if you're looking for a new product, lots of great reasons to check it out. Be sure to do it. And we'll make sure to put the link on the show notes. You could check, be notified when those live episodes start. So you don't have to miss out on anything. But guys, again, Elwin, I really appreciate your time. This was awesome. I think this is hugely beneficial information for all you guys, because we know that being first is better than being good sometimes. So let's go out and get first. And then guess what? If you're first and good, you're going to be in a life-changing experience. We'd love to continue to provide those updates, and we're going to keep trying to do it for you. So we appreciate you helping our audience out today. We appreciate all of you. Thomas isn't here, so I will do my best Thomas voice to say happy scaling. And until next time, be safe out there, and look forward to seeing you then. Oh, also, I should say, be sure to, if you haven't, we have a new YouTube channel for the product or for the podcast. So as Elwin said, hit that bell, subscribe, make sure you never miss out when these episodes hit, and you're notified when they happen. Be sure to do that. Until next time, have a good one.